Okay, we shall get started here. So thank you everyone for joining us for this fantastic age-friendly lunch and learn today on nutrition and food planning as we age. We're really excited about this topic today and hope you are too, because we've got three experts that are going to share some fantastic information with us today. So before we get started, I just want to start with some housekeeping announcements and pieces. So if we can move to our next slide. Fantastic. So for those of you that haven't had a chance to participate in an age-friendly lunch and learn or aren't familiar with Age Friendly Edmonton, we are an initiative of the Edmonton Seniors Coordinating Council supported by the City of Edmonton. Age Friendly Edmonton is part of a global movement to build age-friendly cities and communities. And as a city recognizes that diverse populations and needs of seniors actively supports their inclusion, engagement, and well-being. Today, I want to acknowledge that the Edmonton Seniors Coordinating Council is on Treaty 6 territory and on the traditional lands of the Cree, Blackfoot, Iroquois, Dene, Nakota Sioux, Métis, Saulteaux, Anishinaabe, Ojibwe nations. We acknowledge and respect the past, present, and the future generations of all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people who continue to strengthen Edmonton and Canada. Before we get started today, I have just a couple housekeeping notes for you. We do have your microphones muted. I do ask that you keep them muted for the duration of the presentation. This session is being recorded and can be viewed later at the Edmonton Senior Coordinating Council YouTube channel, and we'll put that link in the chat for you so you can find it afterwards. You can most certainly use the chat at the side. You'll see the little chat bubble at the bottom or top of your computer screen. If you have questions or comments for any of our presenters today, please just put those in the chat window, but do know that we're going to wait to the end to address them. So put the questions there as they come to you, and then we'll happily address those at the end. And we'll do our best to address as many questions as the time allows for today. One last note is that if you are hard of hearing and would prefer to have live transcript turned on, it is closed captioning. And it's not a perfect system, but does a fantastic job of giving you some options for seeing all the words that our speakers say today. So that, I believe, is the end of our housekeeping notes. So today I want to get started with some introductions. My name is Jolynn Hall. I'm the owner of Edmonton 55, and I am a change maker with Age Friendly Edmonton in the Age and Place Hub. In today's presentation, we are delighted to have three fantastic panelists joining us that are going to share their insights and their experience on some of the topics related to nutrition and food planning that sometimes we just don't talk about as much as we should or aren't as very familiar with. So today, I'd like to introduce briefly our three speakers before we get started. We have Erika Halbauer. She's a registered dietitian with a passion for real food enjoyed with friends and family. She currently works at the Telus Healthcare Center and WestView Primary Care Network, but has also enjoyed working in a variety of areas, including acute care, long-term care, and health promotion. Erika is dedicated to using evidence-based nutrition information to help people harness the power of food through all life stages. Secondly, we have Lisa Lindquist. She is a chef working with a team of dietitians and healthcare professionals at Revive Wellness My Viva Plan. Her role with Revive Wellness involves creating recipes, resources, and cooking tutorials for Revive's digital health program, My Viva Plan. Along with her work in the field of nutrition, she also has worked in the restaurant industry as well as with Atco Blue Flame Kitchen. And last but not least is Nancy I knew I'd mess it up. Ziarko. It's the best you're going to get today, Nancy. I apologize. He's a retired teacher with a Bachelor of Education Degree majoring in home economics, food, nutrition, and fashion studies. Over the past 15 years, she has been the primary care partner for her mother, who recently passed at 100 years of age. Nancy is passionate about finding creative ways that her education, career, and experiences can provide assistance to others. So welcome to all of you, and welcome to our presenters. This is such a passionate topic for me because as far back as 2009, Stats Canada survey addressed nutritional risk in older adults and found that 34% of seniors were considered nutritionally at risk. And that includes things like missing meals, losing more than 10 pounds in 6 months, not meeting all of their dietary requirements, and much more. So today's topics are going to be split into 3 different segments. And in each segment, I'm going to give a little bit of time to each of our presenters to share their resources, their insight, and their background with you, so that as we can address not only sort of nutrition as we age, how we do some of our meal planning, and most, relevant, I think, to many of us these days is how we manage some of the rising food costs that we get as well. So we're going to go into our first segment right away here. So just like every stage in our life, nutrition and dietary needs change. And as we age, we have different and special needs that, maybe we haven't thought about or adapted our diet to as we age. So maybe we'll start with you first, Erika, if you can share some of your insights into nutrition as we age.
Absolutely. Yes. Thanks so much, Jolyn, and welcome everybody. It's nice to be here. As a registered dietitian, it's certainly something that I see quite often. We know that our nutrition needs change throughout the entire life cycle, but this is especially true as we approach our older age and later years of life. So this can be for a variety of different reasons. This can be because our lifestyle changes. Maybe we have different health conditions that we're managing. Maybe it's just general wear and tear on the body, or different medications that can affect our nutrition needs as we age. And there are some things that I see quite often with people that can really affect their nutrition status. So one of the main areas that I see can be changes in the digestive system. So this can be everything from having less saliva in the mouth, which can affect our ability to chew and swallow and taste and enjoy our food. But it also, can impact our swallowing. So that can change for a number of different health reasons, but can affect, the types of foods that are, safe for us to eat, which can impact variety and enjoyment as well. We also see some changes that can happen in the digestive system with our changes in our dentition. So with our teeth, right? So that's a big change as well for a lot of people. Our stomach acid also changes as we age, which can affect how we absorb certain nutrients. And then, of course, we know that our digestive system does just slow with age, which can lead to things like constipation. So those can really, really affect the types of foods that we eat and how we enjoy them. We also have some changes in our nervous system that happen. So our senses, so sight, smell, taste. So really how we experience food can change with age. And then we also see some changes in our hunger and thirst regulation, and also our sleep-wake cycle. Our muscular system also changes as we age, no surprise there. So often the less active we are, the less muscle mass we have, which can affect our metabolism and also our appetite and hunger cues. And one of the biggest areas that I do see when I'm working with older adults, it'd be changes to our psychological health. So this could be changes with mood. So maybe depression or anxiety, or sometimes loneliness can affect our appetite and our intake, but also changes in cognition and memory. So that's a big part of our nutrition status as well. So while we know that, food is such a huge part of our quality of life, as we age, one thing that can be challenging is that our nutrition needs actually increase, but our calorie needs decrease. So we do need to be even more mindful about making specific choices around our food to keep ourselves healthy and happy and energized, into those later years. So some nutrients that are especially important as we age are things like calories, making sure that we have enough calories in the diet, which can be challenging if our appetite isn't as big as it used to be. Things like protein that helps with our immune system and healing, and also, preserving all that wonderful muscle mass to keep us active and mobile. Also, some nutrients like iron that are important for making red blood cells and keeping our energy levels up. We find that in things like our meat, poultry, fish, leafy greens, fortified breakfast cereals. Especially important as we age, as is vitamin B12. So that's also found in things like meat and fish and dairy. And as we age, it can be harder to absorb vitamin B12. And this is another important nutrient for making red blood cells and nerve function and energy. So that's another important food group. Also, calcium and vitamin D. So we all know that's important for our bone health. Our needs actually increase as we age. So making sure we're getting a lot of those calcium-rich food sources, which are also great sources of protein, and taking a vitamin D supplement will help us meet our needs. So those are some of the areas that I certainly focus on when I'm looking at somebody's nutrition status as they age. And I will pass it over to Lisa, who will talk a little bit about some of the things that she sees.
Thanks, Erika. That was all very interesting information you shared there. Hi, everybody. I'm going to shift a little bit now and talk about some things that we experience as we age and how it relates to spending time in the kitchen. So as we age, I think it's pretty common that our energy levels are going to start to decline a little bit. And the thing is that cooking is, requires some mental and physical energy. It requires some stamina. We're going to be standing for long periods of time in the kitchen. We might be hunched over our cutting board or our stove, taking things in and out of the oven, using some force to chop foods, and then the cleanup and all of that. So it can be quite a physical endeavor. So a few tips that I have around, maximizing your physical space to make cooking a little bit easier first of all, you want to set up your kitchen in a way that facilitates cooking and make things easier. So you might want to pull up a stool so that you can take a break and sit down or prepare foods at the counter while sitting to take some of the pressure off your joints. You might want to have an ergonomic mat set up to take some of the pressure off of your feet and off of your joints. Wear some supportive shoes as well. That can go a long way. Very important to keep your knives sharp as well. I think that lots of people think that if you have a sharp knife, you might end up cutting yourself a lot more, but it's actually the opposite is true. So if you have a dull knife, you're going to end up having to put more force into your chopping, and that's when accidents happen. So for safety reasons, of course, but also having a sharp knife ensures that your knife is what's doing the work for you and that you're not having to put as much exertion into the motion of chopping. And just having some tools that can help you as well. So maybe you want to use an electric can opener, or maybe you want to use parchment paper or aluminum foil on your baking sheets so that you can make cleanup a little bit easier. If you have a food processor at home, that can help you with some of the chopping required for some recipes or some grating, lots of different tasks in the kitchen. Immersion blenders are another thing that are great to have. It's sort of like an electric stick blender, and that can help you to blend up soups and things like that without having to transfer everything into a blender, which can be kind of physically demanding to do that. And then choosing the right types of recipes as well. So choosing like one pot recipes or sheet pan meals. Or something that goes in the slow cooker where you can just sort of throw things in, turn it on, and let it cook for a few hours. And then to address your energy levels as well, I do recommend planning to cook on the days when you're going to have the most energy. And I know we can't always predict that, but if you have regular commitments in your schedule, things coming up, things like that, obviously we want to try to not cook our biggest, most elaborate meals on those days. If you have some days that are a bit emptier for commitments, plan to cook on those days. Cook a larger batch and freeze some portions for later, so you have something stowed away for those days that you might not have as much energy or time. I also like to keep my pantry really well stocked and and things in your fridge that keep for a little longer as well. And have a few kind of go-to recipes that are really quick and easy, because there's going to come some time when we still have to cook for ourselves, but maybe we don't have any leftovers to use up. So use really easy recipes like tuna salad sandwiches or scrambled eggs or omelets. Those are really easy, and you can use some ingredients that you typically have around. You can also make like a lentil soup or something using canned lentils or dried lentils from your pantry. You can just throw everything into a pot. So those types of meals are always good to kind of have in your back pocket to sort of rely on for those days that you may not have as much energy or time. So I think I'm out of time here for my segment here, so I'm going to hand it off to Nancy now.
Hi, I'm going to come at this maybe a little bit differently because I'm a senior, and I also took care of my mom, who did turn 100. My mom was independent, and so she did a lot on her own for many, many years. And then, of course, I tried to assist as much as I could as we went further. A number of things that I see change, not only for myself, but for my mom, is her thirst. Her thirst increased. So having water at her side was kind of always something that she liked to have. So a water bottle of some sort, a glass of juice, that kind of thing. We did notice that less spice and acidic foods were easier to deal with. She could always add more spices, or like I can too, right? I can add more spices to anything that I may be eating. If it's prepared with too much spice, though, it just isn't as beneficial. With my mom, she did have dentures, and that creates its own issues. It's a fit of the teeth because the gums start to recede. So not only do the gums become more sensitive, but the teeth now don't fit as strongly and tightly. So that means that things like nuts and seeds, those kind of things tend to get caught underneath those dentures. And then that becomes a bit of an issue. So that's something that I was very cognizant of in trying to remind her to clean her teeth in between meals or after, depending on what she ate. I did notice that my mom did tend to enjoy, and I think I did too, actually, more comfort foods, and kind of go back a little bit to some of the traditional foods that I grew up with or that our family had together. And in one way, that's kind of an interesting thing because you could, it gave us something to prepare. And that was something that I liked doing with my mom, was to cook with her. And it gave us an activity, a social activity. She had something then to share with visitors, and she also had some food prepared for herself. So as I say that with comfort foods, there's so many different kinds that people can enjoy, right? So be it lasagna, be it apple strudel, be it soup, be it a stew, there's so many different things that we can sort of look at. I did notice that, for myself included, that sweets take on a different role. They're a treat, but not as much as they used to be. So that small piece of cake was, thoroughly enjoyed, but I didn't want the whole cake sitting there for mom or even for myself at this point. Just finding that heavy creams, really sweet chocolates, those kind of things just don't seem to be as interesting anymore. And what I found with that is that I would try to find more treats that I could bring to her, a small bag of cheesies, something completely different. Bring her a small chocolate bar of a different sort at a different time, that kind of stuff. Of course, I also noticed that what we did see often was the gastro issues that you did mention. I know many seniors develop celiac as they go along, and I developed celiac many, many years ago. So that's one that kind of grabs my attention. And even for my mom, we always had some prune juice on hand. We always had some apple juice on hand. Dealing with diarrhea, dealing with constipation were things that we had to look at. Softening foods, that is also something that becomes more important. And so a little more focus on gravies and sauces with the foods so that they could be, softened by that. Fiber, of course, is important in everything that is eaten, and it's such a balance. But keeping those things in mind meant trying to make sure that there was always something in the pantry that was, kind of beneficial. The vegetables, some canned fruits, or things like that maybe not always readily available because they're perishable. But if you have them in the pantry, they can make a big, big difference. I also found that it became harder to organize those meals. So having a little bit of a plan made a difference, and having sort of a regulated time. So lunch is at noon, tea time is at 2, that sort of thing. It sort of was a cue to say, oh, I can sit down now and have a little bit of a treat. I can have something to eat and enjoy at this point, and I should. Just that little reminder. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but also having a bit of a plan for the week. Tuesday, that's a good day to make pasta. So every Tuesday, if I can't think of anything else, I might go towards making pasta. My mom was very keen on fish on Friday. So it was kind of an easy thing to plan and prepare for. It took a lot of the other planning and things off the table for us in having that ready. And
those are some great suggestions, Nancy. I want to really thank you for sharing those with us. We're going to just continue moving along at this point, and we're going to go into our next topic. So a piece that I think many older adults struggle with is that as we age and our family and life circumstances change, we might not be working as much. We may not have as many people in our own household. We're shifting from usually cooking on a larger scale to a bit of a smaller scale. And it can be hard to manage variety. It can be hard to make sure we're not wasting a lot of food. And sometimes the element that changes is just that we go from this big family style dining to sometimes dining more alone, and that sometimes changes our interest in food. That same StatsCan survey in 2009 highlighted that 23% of older adults ate every meal alone. And so that's a big shift. So I want to kind of go through our panelists on a little bit of your insights into, now we've talked about things we need to notice as changes, but how we can kind of adapt and change maybe to cooking on a different scale. So I'm going to get started with Lisa.
Thanks, Jolynn. Yeah, I definitely recognize the challenge of cooking for one or two. It's just my husband and I, so I'm cooking for 2 all the time. And I do have some tips for that. So first off, generally, many recipes are pretty easy to cut in half or, into smaller amounts. So some aren't, but many are. So don't shy away if a recipe says it serves 4, 6, even 8. You can cut those in half, and you can always create a little conversion chart to refer to as well. If you are, you don't want to always be doing the math on the recipes. Sometimes it's nice to just have something to refer to. So you can do that, but oftentimes what I actually do is I actually just cook the full recipe. It's just a little bit easier that way, and you're already putting the effort in anyways. And I like to maximize the amount of food that I can get from one cooking session. So what I'll do is I'll make the full recipe, and then I'll often, utilize the leftovers for another meal during that week, or several. Sometimes it can work as a leftover lunch and a leftover dinner another day in the week. And you can also freeze many foods really, really well in portions. So that can be individual portions if you have the containers, or you can just divide it up into 2 or 3 sort of medium-sized containers so that you have meals put away for another day. And that's what I do a lot of the time. Lots of things that freeze well. So larger cuts of meat, I know lots of people like to shy away from those when, you know, it's just 1 or 2 people, but that can actually be beneficial. So if you made, let's say, a roast chicken, you can take the meat off the bones after it's cooked and freeze that. And then you have some cooked chicken that can be used in chicken salad sandwiches or pasta dishes or soups. Pork tenderloin, those often come in a package of 2 automatically. So what I'll do is I will cook both at the same time, freeze one of them for another meal down the line. And that's a big part of the meal already taken care of. Same idea with roast beef, those kinds of things. Now, meatloaf, I think, is a good one. You can actually convert that into muffin cup meatloaf. So use your muffin tin and make the little ones. It cooks a little faster as well that way. So that's an added benefit. And then it's just pre-portioned for you. So you can grab those really quickly out of your freezer. You don't even need a container, actually. You can put them on a baking sheet, freeze them, take them off the baking sheet and put them into a freezer bag or a larger container even. You can also bake egg cups similarly. So eggs are really easy to chew and really easy to swallow. And you can customize them with lots of different add-ins for flavor and for veggies and things like that. So that's another really good one to have in the freezer to pull out for lunch or for a dinner. Loaves and stuff you can convert to muffins as well. And then lots of your bigger meals can freeze really well, like lasagna, baked pasta dishes, casseroles, stews, soups. Those kinds of things are really, really freezer friendly. And then the last thing I want to mention is that lots of recipes, you can just be flexible with the ingredients in them and just more refer to them for flavor ideas. So if you want to make a pasta dish and you're not really sure on what spices or herbs to use, you can look up a recipe and get some ideas for the flavorings, but maybe just use the ingredient amounts that in an amount that works for you. So you can kind of customize that. Or a stir fry recipe, if you didn't know what would go into a sauce for a stir fry, you can refer to the recipe for flavorings, but then just use whatever veggies need using in your fridge or some protein that needs using, and just use the appropriate amounts for you that you can eat that day or maybe in 2 sittings. So those are some tips that I have for cooking on a smaller scale. And I think who's next here? I think Nancy is next here. So I'm going to hand it off to her.
Thank you. I'm going to talk to you about my experience in kind of preparing a lot of the meals for my mom, because that's what I did as kind of her caregiver. What I did find, I'm just going to say right away, is that the microwave needs to be at a level that doesn't require reaching or bending down to get. So my mom was using a walker, so she couldn't support herself on the walker and then grab the dish out of the microwave. So that's something logistically that needs to be addressed. The other thing that I found is that variety is important. So I totally agree with preparing, meals and then freezing them. But what I found worked really well for me is that, like, today I might have some leftover pork, but you know what? I don't have enough mashed potato or peas left. So I save that one piece of pork in a container and freeze it. Tomorrow I might have the rice, but I might have rice for 2 or 3 days and divide it up so that every meal was not identical. Because I think that boredom just sets in very quickly if you constantly have the same batch going. And for a senior that is on their own, it gets really monotonous. I did find that I could garnish some of those dishes, whether it was putting chopped up peppers on them for color, or putting, some parsley on it, making it look attractive made a big difference. And I always made sure that mom had a placemat with a nice plate and napkin, seasonal, just to make that a little bit of a more memorable meal, and that it was a sit-down meal. Again, that aided in the digestion as well as, all the other things that are necessary for that. Color and texture are very important. If the meal is looking really bland, before you even start it, you're looking at it and saying, this is the, mashed potatoes, chicken, and cauliflower is just not going to cut it. Trying to add some color, some variety, some spice, sprinkle some cheese on it if that's what's going to work. The other thing that I found that works well is to have that pantry available. And in that pantry, have some smaller things that can be available, to have that can of tuna available, the ham, perchance alphagettis for something different, pasta, having that on is just a very easy, quick meal. And it can be done quickly, easily, and will go with almost everything and anything. A lot of those foods, are available and can be stored for a long, long time. Not everything needs to be frozen. With my mom, I also found that a loaf of bread, it was stale. There's no way she could finish that loaf of bread before it was, of any value to her. So what we did is I would always break it up into 2 or 3. So it would be broken up into a separate bag and frozen. And then that way she could use it and it was still tasting fresh. It didn't have that dry flavor to it. I did find as well, trying to take a look at the food prep, having condiments available was really handy. And also keeping in mind how easy things are to open. So having a pair of scissors handy in order to open maybe a ketchup package or those kind of things that, you may save, or, making sure that the bottles were easy to pour and that kind of thing made a really kind of big difference. The other thing that I find, and I encourage this always, I do it with my own family, is to cook together. Invite the family over and have them help you cook. It is an activity. It is a social affair. Everybody enjoys it. It becomes memorable and a lot of fun. And then it's something that, you're not just sitting talking. And I visited my mom every day. So every day there was not a lot of new stuff to share. But if we could, even if it was a cake mix, make that together, or maybe make the lasagna together and involve the grandchildren or the neighbors or friends, that I think makes a big difference. So that's my bit on managing some of that food prep. Thank you.
Okay, I think I will speak a little bit about the nutrition side of cooking for 1 or 2, which is something that I agree with Lisa. I can relate to as well, having a small family. So, throughout our life, we might be only cooking for 1 or 2, but especially, in our later years, if we're used to cooking for a family, that could be quite challenging and it can be quite daunting at times, especially if we are trying to meet specific nutrition goals and maybe our appetite isn't as strong as it used to be. One thing I like to remind people is that our meals don't need to be complicated or elaborate or labor intensive to be really, really nutritious. Really, there's a basic formula that I encourage everybody to just use their plate as a guide. And if half your plate is fruits or veggies, a quarter of your plate is a high fiber starch like rice or pasta or bread, potatoes, and a quarter of your plate is a protein food like your meat, fish, chicken, beans, nuts, seeds, those types of foods, then you're going to get a really, really well-balanced, nutritious meal. And, it can be quite quick and easy to put together. So some of my favorite go-tos when I don't have a lot of energy or effort for cooking would be things like cooking some frozen veggies. I love frozen peas and scrambling some eggs with them and having a piece of, whole grain toast on the side. It's super simple, super quick, very little cleanup, but it's a very nutritious meal. I'm getting all the protein I need, lots of iron from the eggs, lots of fiber from those peas, and then of course, lots of energy and fiber from the bread as well. So it's a really simple meal, but it could be even as simple as something like cottage cheese and a muffin and some fruit salad, right? So as long as you have those 3 components on your plate in those general proportions, you can feel good knowing that you've got a really well-balanced, nutritious meal. So those are some of the things that I would encourage you to use at your meals. So just look at your plate and see how it looks, and if something's missing. So, okay, I've got my fruit or veggie, I've got my protein food, but maybe I'm missing that whole grain starch. Well, that's going to help you guide you to figure out what you can add to that meal to really boost the nutrition as well. And both Nancy and Lisa had some great ideas for foods to keep on hand. And I would absolutely agree that keeping really quick and easy staples is going to be key, because sometimes maybe we plan to make a meal, a stew, a big batch meal, but then the day comes and we just don't have the energy for it. Or maybe we've got appointments that day and we just run out of time. So making sure that you have those things on hand so that when you are hungry and you're ready to eat, you can put together that balanced meal. So I know some of the same suggestions I know that Nancy mentioned, things like the pasta, putting the bread in the freezer so you always have some handy. Potatoes are great because they last a long time in the pantry. So those are wonderful to keep on hand as well. But also things like, if we're looking for the protein foods, canned fish. So canned tuna, canned salmon are excellent to keep on hand. Canned beans, or even dried beans, it's a wonderful protein source. Really, really quick and easy. If you have meat available, leftovers in the freezer, or something you can whip up quickly, those are always great options as well. Eggs are fantastic. They are so quick and easy and so nutritious, and they also have a really long shelf life. So that's a great protein option as well. Fish, if we could buy it frozen, if we find a good deal on it, that's a nice thing to have on hand as well, and generally cook quite quickly. So those are some ideas. I do also like keeping things like nut butters on hand. They're really, really nutritious, and they also can last a long time in the pantry. Frozen fruits and veggies, those are going to be great to fill out that half that plate. Canned is also a great option, or if you have fresh available, it doesn't have to be cooked. It doesn't have to be fancy. It certainly can be, but it doesn't need to be, even if it's just tomato slices and cucumber slices on the side of the plate. Okay. Now, if you do need to boost the nutrition in your meals, maybe if you're having a hard time managing your weight, or your doctor or your dietitian has told you you need a little bit more of a certain type of nutrient, there are certain foods that can really help with that. So if we need to boost the protein in our meals, keeping things on hand like those nut butters, even something simple like hummus, having that in the fridge is a nice thing that you can put on sandwiches or in wraps, or dip your veggies into it. Also things like skim milk powder is a wonderful thing to have on hand. You can add that to drinks, smoothies, casseroles, mashed potatoes, anything like that. It's a great way to boost the protein in your meals, or even any of your dairy sources. So I know there's a great suggestion for cheese, right? Putting some cheese on your vegetables, putting cheese in your casseroles, mixing cheese into really anything. If you enjoy cheese, is a great way to boost the protein as well. Also, things like Greek yogurt or regular yogurt, all of your dairy products are super, super quick and easy, and great protein sources to have on hand. So I would definitely suggest keeping those handy as well. And then, of course, if you are trying to make sure you're getting enough calories in the day, being aware of making sure that you have things like higher fat milk. So avoid the skim milk varieties and those types of things. Okay. So those are a few ways that you can boost nutrition without a lot of extra effort.
Thank you so much, Erika. Oh, I've been busy taking notes because you all have some really great suggestions that I might be incorporating into my home next. So we're getting a little short on time, so I'm just going to ask my speakers to focus on their highlights for this next topic, because I know this is an important one that we all want to hear, because I think every single one of us has noticed that our grocery bill has definitely been increasing over the last little while with inflation. And although inflation is alarming to everyone, it is more so for those older adults who are on a fixed or limited income. It means having to make choices in the grocery store. So I'm going to start with Nancy just to share. Again, we're a little tighter on time, so we'll ask everyone to be a little bit brief in this topic, but sort of just what are your top highlights for managing food costs and waste at this time?
I'm going to start by suggesting you kind of use your family and your friends and your neighbors, because they want to help and they're more than happy to. So if you know someone's going on a Costco run, ask them to pick up that roast chicken. Great deal. You can have that chicken that day. You can freeze some parts. You can cube some of the breast and have it ready for a stroganoff or something later. And then you can make soup out of the bones. So just a great deal if you can do that. I found that too often lots of friends would pop by and visit mom, and they'd always come with something. But I tried to encourage, and I finally got a lot of people trained. Please bring mom 2 slices of ham. Can you bring her 2 oranges? Can you bring her 1 banana? She was thrilled with that, and it saved a lot of that running for the perishable stuff and throwing away and wasting too much of the stuff. The other thing I'm going to suggest is for birthdays and celebrations, it's to encourage people to give gifts of teas and coffees and maybe cookies, fruit basket, those sorts of things that can be utilized rather than buying another cream that's going to sit on the shelf or a candle that probably won't get burnt. I think that really works well. I also encourage you to suggest visitors come in smaller groups, because it breaks up the visits and more socialization goes on, and it doesn't become as overwhelming. So suggesting to friends to bring, a fruit or something like that, I think is one big thing. Going to the dollar store to pick up some of those brand names that you like for the soups or the canned pasta, the canned fruits, vegetables, soups, pastas, cake and cookie mixes even work really well. Try to buy things that don't become perishable right away. So like craft singles as opposed to buying a block of cheese, because that'll last so much longer. And of course, always try to take home leftovers if you're going out somewhere. Even if it's somebody's home that you've been at, it's nice to be able to share and take home some of that stuff. And I bet they're thrilled if you do that. So those are my quick pointers.
So we'll move over to Erika here next.
Okay. So a few of the tips that certainly I've been sharing with a lot of people, and I use it myself as well to help save money at the grocery store. First and foremost, looking for store specials and being a coupon shopper. So one thing that's really nice is that a lot of the main grocery stores actually have a customer appreciation day on the first Tuesday of the month, where, the big chains like Safeway, Sobeys, Save On Foods, they offer 15% off your entire grocery bill if you spend more than $50. So it's a great time to stock up on some of those more expensive items, especially things like meat, dairy that we have seen increase, especially over the last year, but also things like nuts and seeds. So great time to stock up on the first Tuesday of the month. Also looking for no-name brands. Most of the no-name brands are absolutely exactly the same as the more fancy marketed brands, and you're going to save a ton of money. They're often on the lower shelves or the higher shelves, so you can also get a little physical activity in when you go and reach for those guys, and also save money. Meatless meals are a nice way to save money as well. We know meat prices have certainly increased, so using those beans and legumes, anywhere you can use lean ground beef, you can use a can of lentils, right? So save a lot of money using canned or dried beans. Frozen fruit and veggies are absolutely as nutritious, if not more sometimes, as our fresh fruit and veggies. They are a lot cheaper and they don't go bad in the crisper or in the fruit bowl. So they're a really, really nice way to save money, but still get all that wonderful fiber and vitamins and minerals. Shopping in bulk is a nice way to save money as well. And then also a couple things that you can look for at the grocery store is there are some foods out there that they charge a bit of a premium for them, and unfortunately they have a bit of a health halo. So beware of some of the marketing out there that might make you think you're getting a much more nutritious food for a higher price point, but things like brown eggs are no more nutritious than white eggs, but often cost more. So just know that all eggs are nutritious. So choosing the cheaper variety, or if you're somebody, if you're looking for organic foods, just know that those are just as nutritious as conventionally grown, but much more expensive. So choosing the regular will save you some money as well. So those are a few things that you can do to make nutritious choices and save a few bucks along the way.
All right, I think it is my turn here. So my tips, I would say my number one tip is actually to do some meal planning. I think a lot of people think that meal planning is reserved for large families that are on the go and have a million things to do, but it can be useful for anyone. And it's something I utilize in my own life for a very small household, and it's been a real game changer. So really all you need to do is just dedicate some time each week to sit down and plan out some meals for your upcoming week. Doesn't have to be fancy. It can be some of those meals that Erika mentioned, even just if it's toast and scrambled eggs and some fruit or veggies, that's fine. And you don't have to follow the exact plan either. It doesn't have to be certain meals on certain days. It can be that if you need that structure, that's great, but it doesn't have to be. It can just be as simple as jotting down some ideas for meals that you're going to want to cook and you're going to want to eat. And then you want to make a grocery list based off of those meals. And this helps to reduce waste because you're making a list of things that you're specifically going to need for those meals in the exact quantities that you need. So you're not going to be overbuying. You're not going to go to the store and have to guess on amounts of things and then stress about using them up before they're going to go bad. So it's really a great way to use exactly what you need for the week. You can also utilize leftovers. I think this is a theme with all of my topics here, but I love using leftovers in my meal plan whenever I can. Nancy mentioned that they can get kind of boring to repeat the same meals, and I totally agree with that. So there are some ways you can repurpose leftovers too in new ways. So if you made a roast chicken on a Sunday, the next day you can use that chicken to make a chicken noodle soup. Or if you make those muffin cup meatloaves, then the next day you can crumble them up, mix them with some tomato sauce, and you have spaghetti and meat sauce. So there's some ways you can get creative to use your leftovers, or just pop them into the freezer for a meal, 3 weeks from now when you're not bored by that meal anymore. Now, when you go shopping, there's also some, Erika already went through a lot of these same tips, but things to kind of keep your foods longer so that you're not wasting. So I kind of mentioned this already, but you want to buy amounts of perishable foods only in the amounts that you're going to be able to use up in a reasonable time frame. I know it's tempting to buy the larger packages sometimes because there's cost savings there, but we don't experience those cost savings if we can't get through them and we end up throwing some of them out. So buy only what you're going to be able to reasonably be able to use, or you can buy the larger package and split it with a friend. So you both get to experience the savings there. So you can buy a larger package of chicken thighs and split that with a friend, or you can take it home and immediately split some off and freeze some and just label it and use that in a few weeks' time. So there are some ways to save that way. When you're in the grocery store, you want to pick up your perishable foods last so they can stay cold for longer. So your meats and your dairy products and those kinds of things you want to pick up last. And you want to check your best before dates on those perishable foods too. I have definitely made the mistake before of just picking something up without looking, and I get home and I see the best before date is that day or the next day. And that's incredibly frustrating because then you're scrambling to figure out how to use it all up before it goes bad, and you don't want to go back to the store to return it. So definitely make sure to check that best before date is at least a few days, if not longer, from the day that you purchased it. In the summer months, you might want to bring an insulated grocery bag with you or a small cooler so that you can transport those foods home and keep them cold. And then when you get home, you want to unpack those perishable foods first and put them right in the fridge or in the freezer so you can keep them for a little bit longer. So those are my quick and easy tips to kind of manage your perishable foods so you can keep them longer and to not waste so that you can use what you have.
Thank you so much. I think every person listening here today probably got some great nugget somewhere in this presentation. I know I have a whole lot of notes and everything will be changing for my family. So I'm going to ask Caroline, we're going to switch to question and answer, and we're going to start going through those questions and we'll see which of our panelists are best to address them.
All right. Terrific discussion and tips. I've been busy writing down these things as well. And we do have a few questions in the chat. So I'll just start with the first one, and then whoever would like to answer that, just indicate from one of our panelists. The first question I have here is, I heard it's much better and healthier to eat fresh meat, not frozen. Is that true, even for people with cancer? Who would like to answer that question?
I can speak to that for sure. Okay. Whether it's fresh or frozen, your meat is going to have the same nutritional content. So it's an excellent choice either way.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. That's great. The second question, does our chef, I guess that's Lisa, does our chef have a good recipe for egg cups?
I do actually. So I did share a website with Jolyn, and she'll be hopefully sending that out. So My Viva Plan or Revive Wellness, we have a recipe section on our website with recipes developed by myself and our other chef. I can't take credit for all the recipes on there, but there's a couple on there that come to mind. And one of them is called Loaded Veggie Baked Egg Cups. So those ones have a lot of veggies in them, and you can put them, all the veggies in all of them, or you can separate them out into, you know, different veggies for each segment of your muffin tin. And then there's also one for Southwest egg muffins, and those ones have a little bit of a different flavor profile. So those are two options that are both great, and they both freeze pretty well as well.
Great, awesome. You guys are making me hungry. I have another question here. I have used skim milk for years, thinking lower fat content is desirable. Should I be switching to 2% or full fat milk? Who would like to take that one on?
I can take that one too. It sounds like a nutrition question.
Okay.
And of course, if any of the other panelists want to chime in, I'm sure that they know the answer as well. So what I would say is it really depends on your personal health goals. So whether or not you're choosing 2%, 1%, or skim milk, the protein content is the same. The calcium content is the same. What is going to be different is the amount of calories in that milk, and especially the amount of saturated fat. So for some people who are watching their intake of saturated fat, maybe for their cholesterol or for their heart health, choosing the skim milk might be the best option for them. But if somebody was having a hard time maintaining their weight, maybe they were having some unintentional weight loss, then choosing the higher fat, higher calorie milk would be the best choice for them. So it is very individual, and also comes down to what you like too. So, you know, preference does definitely play a role too.
Wonderful. Excellent. Thank you for that. And we do have a few more questions. This one I was wondering about as well. This is a good question. What is the best way to freeze food items? Plastic dishes, plastic bags? And I'm wondering about glass containers. So who would like to take that on? Lisa?
Yeah, I could address that one. It really depends on the food, but most of them, I mean, it's pretty flexible. You can freeze most things in whatever you have, but I would say, you know, raw meats and things, you want to seal those off as best as you can so they don't get freezer burnt. So you want to wrap those even in sometimes I like to wrap them in wax paper first to just create an additional barrier, and then put them into like a freezer bag or not a container usually, because then the air still gets in there. So for those types of things, I do like to use freezer bags, but for leftover cooked foods, I like to do those in containers. And you can do glass containers. Where you have to be careful with those is if you're taking them directly from the freezer and putting them in your oven, that temperature differential can cause, you know, cracking in the glass. So just make sure to let those thaw out a little bit in the fridge, maybe overnight, and that can prevent that. And then, yeah, most things you can just freeze in whatever you have. I like to sometimes freeze things like tomato paste. You get a whole can and you only need a tablespoon for a recipe. So I like to take that and freeze tablespoon measures on a baking sheet, like on some parchment. And once it's frozen, then you can take it off the sheet and put it into a freezer bag. And then anytime you need it for another recipe, you can just use a tablespoon at a time. So things like that you can put in a freezer bag. I wouldn't say there's any particular special containers you need for freezing things. But if you're interested in freezing in portions, I do recommend getting little portion sized containers whenever you can, or just a mix, whatever works best for you. Hopefully that answers the question. I know I kind of kept it general, but it really depends on the food sometimes. So.
Fabulous. Thank you so much for that answer. And there is another question in the chat. Can we use meat that has freezer burn? Good question. Who would like to address that?
I can address that one again here. You can. It depends on how old it is. Typically, meats that you don't want to use beyond about the 6-month mark in the deep freeze for safety reasons, but also for quality. The freezer burn isn't dangerous. It's just mostly a quality thing. So it's just going to not taste as good. It's not going to have as much flavor. It's not going to have as much moisture in it. So that can really affect your overall experience of eating it, and it might not make it worth cooking, because putting in all that effort to cook something that isn't going to be palatable might not be worth it. However, if it's just a small amount, that can usually be overlooked. And if it's only been in the freezer for a couple of months, then that's perfectly fine. But you kind of have to, this is why it's good to label foods when you freeze them too. So you can say, oh, I've had this roast in the freezer for 3 years and it's quite freezer burnt. Maybe it's time to let this one go. But if it's something that's been in there for 3 months and it just has a little bit on the side, that should be fine to use. It'll just be a little bit of loss of quality.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Yeah, that's what a fantastic panel, and so informative. I think that's all of the questions in the chat, and we're kind of winding down now. I think we just have a couple of more minutes, and I'll just pass the time back to Jolynn for some final remarks. Before I forget, if you do have some questions that you have afterwards, feel free to email us at agefriendly@seniorscouncil.net. I will put that in the chat, and we'll be happy to pass your questions along to the panelists to have your questions answered. So great, thanks for your time, and pass the time back to Jolynn.
Thanks so much, everyone. A huge thank you to our panelists, nutritionists, so much of an important piece of our day that sometimes just gets over the hustle and bustle and just routines that we have. So it's nice to hear some of the great tips you have for just being aware of how our nutrition needs can change so that we can identify them when things are a little bit off, and maybe shift how our diet and needs need to be. I love hearing from everyone just some of the creative tips for cooking on, but also just some of these cost-saving measures. They're things that all of us can put into use. So thank you to Erika, Lisa, and Nancy for your time and your expertise here today. We truly do appreciate it. All of the participants will be receiving a survey, and in that survey email, we also will have some links to Meals on Wheels, which does have a frozen and a fresh meal program, as well as a grocery shopping option for those that are having difficulties with those tasks. And we will also have some other links that our panelists have shared in that email as well. So do watch for that. And then we do have another event coming up in December with Age Friendly Edmonton. And so we'll have the information there. I think we have a slide if it can appear here magically. But if not, we'll make sure that all the details for our story celebration in December will be in your in your survey as well, so that you've got all of those details. So there's our email address, where if you have other questions, we will most certainly forward those to our panelists. And just a huge thank you to our panelists, and a huge thank you to all of you for tuning in today and putting your nutrition first. And hopefully we will see you online, I believe it is, for our December 14th Age Friendly celebration. And keep watch because there is some fantastic lunch and learns planned for the new year as well. So thank you so much, everyone, for your time today. Have a fantastic day. And thank you so much for joining us. Have a great day, everyone.